Do you recognize this man? Someone does. Pepperidge Farm remembers. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of the murder in room 1046. Viewer discretion is advised. The hotel president, the luxury that women love, for $2 for a room? Jesus. Olden times were cheap. This was the hotel president, or is, because it's still around, Mike, located in Kansas City, Missouri. This is the hotel president today, and as you can see, they really haven't changed much. The only thing they've changed is they painted it when color was invented. Mike, you might be an idiot. Back in time. The date, January 4th, 1935. At about 7 o'clock in the morning, the switchboard operator noticed that the phone in room 1046 appeared to be off the hook. So they sent a bellboy up there to knock on the door to see if there's anything wrong. No one answered when he knocked. He knocked a second time, and this time he heard like a growly voice respond. The man said, "Come in, turn on the lights." The voice did not sound very familiar, though, to the bellboy, because the bellboy had helped this guest to room 1046 the day prior. Didn't sound anything like him. However, the door remained locked, and no one came to unlock it from within the room, so the bellboy just left. Fast forward to 8:30 a.m. Once again, the phone appears to be off the hook, so the bellboy goes back up there, knocks on the door. This time, the bellboy, Howard, had a master key, which he let himself in. The room was pitch dark. He couldn't see a thing. All the shades were drawn. There was one very dull light on in the hallway of the room, which sort of illuminated like the silhouette of a man. The bellboy can see that the phone had been knocked off the little side table, and so he goes over there, picks up the phone, puts it back on the hook, and puts it back on the table. However, he did not get a very good look at the man at all, because considering how dark it was, and he just assumed the guy was shit-faced. So he leaves the room again. 11:03 a.m. The phone in room 1046 once again is now off the hook. The bellboy goes back up there with the master key, unlocks the door, walks in, and this time things have changed. The bellboy found a man on his knees with his head in his hands. He saw blood all over the walls. There was blood on the bed, blood all over the bathroom. So the bellboy, frightened, books it out of the room, goes downstairs and says, "Hey, we need to call the police now." When police arrive, the man is still in the room. He is still barely coherent. He's also tied up. He has twine and rope around his legs, his arms. He has part of the rope around his neck. The ropes themselves, once white, were now completely saturated with blood. When questioned, he said, I fell onto the bathtub. That's what did all this." The man was rushed to the hospital. It was not just a fall into a bathtub. This man had been severely beaten. I mean, very, very badly. He'd been stabbed numerous times, primarily in his chest. He had severe bruising around his neck. Someone had beat and stabbed the shit out of this man. Somehow he was still alive. However, a few hours later at the hospital, he would be pronounced deceased. Now they have an unsolved murder in room 1046. The first question police have, who is he? Obviously. Well, that would become very, very tricky. They drew this composite of the man initially, and he had checked in under the name Roland T. Owen. He had checked in on January 2nd, 1935, so a few days prior. The hotel staff said he looked like he was maybe 20 to 30 years old or so. He had a large scar on his head, which is actually, you can see that little white patch on the side. He had no luggage with him when he checked in. All he had was his toothbrush and toothpaste, which he kept in his pocket. But all of that, by the way, was missing from the room. As were the clothes he was seen checking into the hotel with, those clothes were gone. It became clear pretty quickly that this man's name, in fact, was not Roland T. Owen. So now they had a mystery of who really was this man and who did this to him. One thing about these older hotels is that you were able to lock the door from one side so that you couldn't unlock it from the other. Meaning you could lock the door from the outside, and if you're in the room, you wouldn't be able to unlock that one, so you'd be trapped. That's the condition it was that morning. Roland T. Owen, or whoever he is, was literally locked into his own hotel room. That same morning, there were witnesses, including hotel staff, who said they think they saw at least one woman and a man, possibly two women, leaving that hotel room, all before this was all, discovered. The maid staff said that they had gone into the room over the course of the past day and a half or so And every time they went in there, it was completely dark. The man was in there, and one of the maids heard him on the phone saying the phrase, "No, Dawn, I don't want to eat. I just had breakfast. No, I'm not hungry." And that's really all she heard. They also found a note in the room that says, "Dawn, I will be back in a few moments." Who's Dawn? Later that same day, $265 for a pair of fucking shoes? Ladies, holy man. Huh? Let's go back to olden times. Or not. They had like bubonic plague and syphilis and stuff. Anyway, later that same day, when the maid had returned to the room, she heard what sounded like two men having a conversation within the room. She knocks on the door. The man says, "Who is it?" And she says, "I'm the maid. I have towels." And then another man says, "We don't need any towels." The only thing police, evidence-wise, found in that room were an unsmoked cigarette, a hairpin, and a safety pin. And they also found a necktie label, and that's it. His socks, his shoes, his overcoat, all the stuff he was wearing when he checked in, gone. Toothbrush, toothpaste, hairbrush that he brought, gone. All the soaps and everything from the bathroom, gone. They could not find out who this man was. Now, they shared this photo in the local newspapers, showing the very distinct scar on the side of his head. And about a year or so later, in 1936, Roland T. Owen was finally identified. A woman named Ruby Ogletree in Alabama saw this and said, "Oh my God, that's my son. That's Artemus." She identified him as 19-year-old Artemus Ogletree. He had left his home in Alabama in 1934 to travel. He sent letters to his mom, but over time those letters began to stop coming. However, knowing who he was did not help solve this case whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it made it more difficult. We have a man from Alabama who checked in under a fake name in a hotel in Missouri, who brought no luggage, who was always in the room, dark, and who died in a very brutal way. Initially, Roland was set to be buried in a pauper's grave. However, they got a phone call from a mysterious caller. This caller says, "You need to bury him at Memorial Park Cemetery. We will pay for it." The money for the burial arrived, rolled up in a newspaper. There were 13 American Beauty roses in that newspaper and a simple little note that says, "Love forever, Louise." The caller also said, "I'm doing this for my sister." Allegedly, the man who called all of this in, well, he said that Roland had cheated on a girl. And because he was unfaithful to another woman, this unknown man arranged a meeting in room 1046 at the President Hotel with him and two women. And finally, the man who called about paying for all of this said at the very end of the phone call, "Cheaters always get what's coming to them." And he hung up. Was this all over a love triangle? There's belief that he was engaged to another woman, but then was unfaithful and started sleeping around with another woman. Possibly someone connected to the woman he cheated on set this whole thing up and then brought both women in who had no idea they were both being, cheated on, and they killed them for it. Seems a bit extreme. However, they have no idea the actual identity of the man who called. They have no idea who Louise is, if that's even the real name. They have no idea about anything. They found his identity. They know who he is now. They have this bizarre phone call from an anonymous man, but they are still left with the exact same question. Who killed him? And what truly was the motive? The answers to those questions all likely died with Artemus Ogletree. He seemed to be scared. He also seemed to know something was coming, but he said nothing to anyone. With this happening in 1935, everyone involved is dead, and the mystery of what truly happened behind the door of room 1046 in 1935 will likely remain a mystery forever.